Before we jump into this episode, I want to remind you that while Caitlin and Sophia are dietitians, we're not your dietitians. This means the information shared in the Food Freedom Fertility podcast is intended to entertain, educate, and inform. It is not a substitute for medical care. This information is not intended to diagnose, manage, or treat disease. Always consult with your doctor before making any changes.
All right, welcome to Connection Corner. This is a new segment you may have heard from our last episode where we're going to read a review or an email or something that we get from those listeners that take the time to reach out to us. Our favorite way for you to do this is to leave a review on Apple Podcasts so that the algorithm can favor the podcast and help more people. Sophia and I don't know what we're doing with this podcast if we aren't connecting and actually meeting your guys' needs. We can hang out together without big clunky headphones on and recording ourselves and having to listen to our voices, or pay a VA to get this all produced.
Or do a stack of research to give you a well-informed episode.
Amen. But we're not doing that. We're wearing the silly headphones and cursing at technology sometimes and doing the things. So leave us a rating and review. And today we're going to hear from Rachel.
Rachel titled her review today, Finding Joy. To CNS, which is Caitlin and Sophia. I can't tell you the joy I have experienced listening to your podcast. My soul, mind, and body are nourished. God has blessed you both with an ability to communicate knowledge, but also to reflect His goodness and mercy. Well done. You have continued to show up, and I'm certain it isn't easy and many times thankless, but know that you are touching souls and the souls trying to bring forth life. Praying for you both that you too have great joy in this new year. Rachel, that's about the sweetest thing that I've ever heard. Thank you so much for your beautiful review. And you know, it is thankless sometimes, but not today because you just left us that wonderful review. Thanks, Rachel.
Welcome to another episode of Food Freedom and Fertility. We are your hosts, Caitlin Johnson and Sophia Pavia, both registered dietitian nutritionists, both specializing in functional nutrition and women's health. And today we are joined by, what do we always say, a very special guest. All of our guests are very special. But we have Ryan Woodbury with us today. She is one of the co-creators of Needed, which is a perinatal nutrition brand. So it's a company that really is championing better nutrition for women, and we're going to talk about that today. It's more than just a supplement brand. And Ryan herself is a lifelong environmentalist. She is also a holistic nutritionist, and she's been trained in folk herbalism. She is a mother of a little girl, and she's got a baby boy on the way and 2 doggies. And that's Ryan. She's here with us today. Hi, Ryan.
I'm so excited to be here with you.
So happy to have you. We should also note that part of why Ryan's here today is because Needed has taken on sponsorship of the Food Freedom Fertility podcast this season.
And you're
which
wearing
is so
your
exciting.
Needed hat.
I did.
Yeah,
I pulled it
I
out.
almost wore my Needed t-shirt, and then I don't know why I didn't do it. That makes me want to go change right now. Dumb.
Yeah, we're big fans of the podcast and grateful that you both are part of the community.
We are recovering from like the worst tummy bug that my house has ever seen. And this hat was hanging on, the lamp by my bed, and I kept walking by it going like, ain't that the truth? Because when mom goes down, just the whole house struggles so much. You're so
true.
Needed. So needed.
Yeah, that immune support works well. That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Well, Ryan is here to talk about something that I know that you have been wondering. It's something we haven't touched on in our podcast yet, but it's a very important topic. So what we're going to mostly talk about today is like, okay, if when I look at the food label, it says percentage of daily intake is X amount, where does that number come from? Is that number applicable to, is this just all humans in the world should be eating this? What about someone who's trying to conceive? What about somebody who's pregnant? What do we do with these numbers, and are they accurate? So that is really what we're going to talk about today with Ryan, because she is something of an expert on this topic since she owns a women's, well, I would say perinatal, plus there's some stuff for dudes too. But she's really the expert here in the room with us. So we're pumped to have her on. That sounded so dumb.
Yeah.
Oh my
You
God.
know, I think, RDAs, DRIs can sound like a pretty dull concept, but they're actually hugely important in understanding kind of their relevance and what it means for your family's health and nutrition.
Yeah. And I think even just saying those two acronyms, people are like, RDA, DRI, what's the difference? And why does this even matter? And like we've been trained since we could read about a 2,000 calorie diet, because that's what's on the nutrition fact panel on everything ever.
Yeah.
So can you give us a little context for that?
Yeah, absolutely. So the RDAs, or the recommended daily allowance, was actually set back in World War II in the 1940s. And the reason for it was, I think the government felt that there was a public health problem if our soldiers overseas were not properly nutritionally supported in order to carry out their duties in defending the country. So a group of scientists decided to get together to determine what is the recommended amount of nutrition we need to provide people to make sure we don't have this, human health, public security related issue. And ultimately, those RDAs have been updated over time and have ultimately evolved into the DRIs, or dietary reference intake, which is exactly what you see translated on packaged food and supplements. And as you both alluded to, that's the percentage of your daily value, i.e., did you get your vitamin C for the day? And these values, a lot of research went into them, but they are certainly flawed for a number of reasons, especially for women's health at the perinatal life stage. And I think that is helpful context to know, because if you are determining your diet off of, hooray, like I hit my percent daily value for vitamin D, you can ultimately be disappointed in really giving your body what you need. And a couple of the main reasons why they're very flawed is sort of, one, these guidelines represent the recommendation for nutritional adequacy, which is really anchored in how to avoid a disease condition. And all of us, I think the folks that are listening to the two of you, are not living their lives to avoid a disease condition. They're living their lives to optimize, feel their best, be as fertile as possible. So you want to look at a different standard, because health doesn't come down to minimalist avoiding a deficiency. It's really, what are the values needed to support you to thrive and fully reflect that optimal health perspective. So I think just that grounding in avoiding a disease condition can be misleading and materially off from thriving. If you think about it, like a vitamin C amount to avoid scurvy versus the vitamin C amount that you want to have healthy tissues such that your pelvic floor can move appropriately as the pregnancy goes on and through the birth process, as one example. And then another example around why these numbers are really flawed is that pregnant and breastfeeding women were only included in 17% of the studies that informed these reference ranges. And the studies also lack ethnic and racial diversity. So I think the data set basically that they're looking at really isn't
old white
sort
men.
of perfect.
That's pretty much who we're looking at.
Yes. And a lot of assumptions were made in translating it for women, other ethnic populations, which we know there are, pretty dramatic, genetic differences, which lead to nutritional requirement differences. And then ultimately for pregnant and breastfeeding, which is, the most nutritionally kind of intense stage of a woman's life, both undervalued, and that undervalued amount might not be exactly accurate, as really there isn't enough population specific data guiding it.
I think undervalued is such a strong point, because it also speaks to public health narratives that have just been ingrained. Like, it's not just undervalued, but it's like, what do we think we can sell people on?
Mm-hmm.
Like I remember sitting in my mother and baby nutrition class in college and having a lactation consultant come in and talk. I mean, and this is like the authority on breastfeeding, right? She's telling us that the WHO devised recommendations, and then even the recommendations in the United States are not actually based on what's optimal for children and mothers, but it's based on what we think we can convince women to do. So instead
Totally.
of telling women like, hey, breastfeed as much as you can, at least up to age 2, well, exclusively breastfeed to 6 months and you can stop at a year because that's what we think we can convince you to do. Because if we just tell you 2 years, nobody will even try. And
Totally.
so it, like, I think one thing that I've loved about watching Needed is like the respect that you have for women, being an informed consumer and just an individual that has higher sights than I'm just going to do the bare minimum, but I'm going to try to approach, you know, this optimal level of health for me and my baby, because we're not just trying to like make babies here. We're trying to create a family and live life together.
And help women really feel their best. And I think too much attention is really placed on the baby and looking at the baby's health from, hey, do they have all 10 fingers and 10 toes? Not really, you know, the trajectory of their immune and cognitive development and these other factors that really aren't being tracked right now in the standard of care. And we think that's a big miss. And with this, you know, women and children are really paying a steep price in society at large when you think about that. And I think a perfect example is funny. I was talking to a customer of ours yesterday of just, you know, beyond what I said before around, hey, population isn't correct and this is a minimal amount. When you look at just the supplement facts panel or a nutritional facts panel on a piece of packaged food, those ratios can be misinterpreted as there's more to the story. This was a customer that was telling me that her, she has gestational diabetes, and her basically hospital assigned nutritionist told her, peanut M&Ms are an optimal snack for you because of the like protein to fat ratio, like have as many peanut M&Ms as you want. And it's just like, you know, I come from the philosophy of my like nutrition professor very much hammered home, like you can't say any food is good or bad. You can only say it's good relative to what someone would have taken instead. And yeah, I'm very supportive that peanut M&Ms are better for you than regular M&Ms.
The peanut one is probably better than
for
the
your
plain
blood sugar,
if you have
but
diabetes.
Let's not go all the way to saying peanut M&Ms are an optimal food for someone with gestational diabetes. And again, that's taking a very narrow look of like, hey, this like is a thumbs up on the, you know, DRI kind of percentages on a label. And we don't want to go there.
Yeah, I have patients that end up with gestational diabetes because honestly, listeners, sometimes you can do all the things and still get gestational diabetes. There's no shame in having this diagnosis. It's just sometimes the way things go. And anyway, they end up with gestational diabetes and they're like, can we work together a little? I don't want to go to the hospital dietitian. I don't want to go to the diabetes educator that my doctor's going to send me to because they're just going to tell me to eat whole grain cereal with non-fat milk, and that is not.
And a glass of orange juice at breakfast.
And a glass of orange, yeah. Mm-hmm. It's just going to be the worst.
A lot of education is needed around nutrition and the standard of care. That's for sure. And I think, you know, I think that's a lot of the sort of the mission of Needed beyond just, you know, making better supplements that are more supportive for the female body, but it's educating on, hey, why this matters and how do you sort of empower yourself with the knowledge such that, you know, you can be that health advocate for yourself.
So piggybacking off of our last question about how the RDAs are formed and all of that. So when somebody is getting ready to try to conceive, whether they are just thinking, okay, this is the year I want to have a baby, or I'm going to stop preventing pregnancies pretty soon, or they're in the place of like, wow, I really thought I'd be pregnant by now, and things are not going the way that I want. Anyone who's in the sort of the preconception phase of life, why would they maybe want to look beyond these RDAs? I know you sort of answered that, but
Yeah, I think it's said simply that, I think optimal fertility is really a reflection that your entire system is working well. Our body's not isolated. We aren't just like, fertile if another part of our body is not being supported properly.
Hmm.
So I think it really is in this moving your body to a place that it's optimal, and therefore your fertility can be optimal, and your chances of getting pregnant and the sort of viability of that egg and your ability to carry it healthfully. So we do believe that, you know, that preconception period is very important, both for the female and the male, in dictating pregnancy outcomes, and that proper nutrition values can support getting your body to that optimal place, and can promise 100% if you're relying just on the RDAs, your body is going to be lacking nutrition to get to optimal.
And I mean, let's be real about even looking at the RDAs, who's actually tracking what they're eating and saying, like, yeah, 40% of the time I hit 100% of my vitamin C, but 80% of the time I hit 75% of it.
You'd be
Let's talk
surprised.
about vitamin
There are a
E
lot of girls that I work with that are major
trackers.
My Fitness
Trackers.
Pal
Yeah.
people,
But
major
we're
chronometer
talking like
people.
elite part of the population. Like
I guess that's true.
they're,
The ladies that I work with are the elite part of the population. I would agree.
but you
No,
know
but
what
I
I
get what you
mean?
mean. Like the average Jane, that's just like living
and,
life.
Yeah.
and
And even the
so,
people that are tracking, it's sort of, there's issues, with we tend to eat the same thing over
Mhm.
and over again. Like you have your
Especially if
rotation
you are
of,
somebody who tracks, because you're like, dude, I don't want to enter in a whole new recipe into this
right, these are
thing.
things that work for me. And,
Mhm.
different types of
Mhm.
foods have different types of micronutrient mixes, and that, eating similar things again and again can lead to vitamin and mineral kind of deficiency, among other things. And I think one of the areas where, I'm like you guys, I'm 100%, food first, and run a supplements company though, because despite, my lifestyle of shopping mostly at the farmer's market and sourcing meats directly from farms, I still had very significant nutritional deficiencies that
Yeah.
were difficult to fulfill without supplementation.
And pretty quickly, this can become the only thing you obsess about. And there's so much more to life than calculating everything that you're eating. And so, Sophia and I particularly feel like, especially in this preconception period, this isn't the time to mess around, especially if you're playing from behind. Like if you're in a game and you're 20 points behind, like you put in your best players, right? Like
Yeah.
Mhm.
you run your best trick plays that you've tried, or you're like most, like you throw everything at it, especially when the
Mhm.
stakes are really high. And the stakes couldn't be higher when we're talking about trying to create a new human and growing a new human within you, or nourishing yourself after having finished that and potentially breastfeeding. And so, can you talk a little bit about how a supplement like a prenatal, and other things that we might want to put in around a prenatal based on somebody's individual needs, how that could like fill a gap between what's recommended and what might be what we would look at and go, this is way more optimal?
Ryan,
Yeah.
why don't you think about your answer to that for a second, and we will hear from one of our sponsors, and then when we come back, let's hear your answer.
Great.
We're taking a break to talk about our sponsor, Fertility Cloud. In working with hundreds of you ladies, we have noticed a problem that has come up. I know it's come up for me, Caitlin. It's come up for your clients as well. And that is not only finding a doctor who is going to know how to help you, but one that wants to. We have a lot of issues here, and sometimes getting a simple blood test, or actually getting a medication, or talking to someone who's actually an expert in fertility can not only take an insane amount of time, but it can feel like you're fighting your doctor.
Yeah, or you're playing like Russian roulette to get in front of somebody who actually cares. We are so excited to be partnering with Fertility Cloud because they have a solution for all of these frustrations. Just last week, I had a client that needed right now care, and we couldn't get her in front of an OB. And she got a same day appointment with Fertility Cloud and spoke to a reproductive endocrinologist and had a prescription that she needed in her hand hours later. This is a solution that our industry desperately needs, and we are so excited to present to you.
So if you're in a remote area and you have to drive 4 hours to go see a doctor, or if you've been to multiple doctors and none of them seem to really listen or really care or want to take an approach that works for you, start up with My Fertility Cloud.
My Fertility Cloud has provided us a link, so check it out in the show notes. That will get you $25 off your first visit with one of their providers.
We're taking a quick break from this episode to talk about one of our sponsors, the Prenatal Nutrition Library.
We love the Prenatal Nutrition Library. It's a searchable database and app, which means you have answers within seconds and peace of mind that what you're eating during pregnancy is both safe and nutritious.
It's almost like having your own personal pregnancy dietitian in your back pocket that's going to not only tell you, is it safe to eat this? How much of that should I have? Yada, yada, yada. But give you actual meal plans so you know how to put it all together onto your plate today. And the meal plans are trimester specific, meaning, some women are kind of nauseous in their first trimester and maybe they need specific foods to help combat that. Prenatal Nutrition Library has got you covered. Or the fact that your baby's brain is growing rapidly in your third trimester and you need your nutrition to support that. Prenatal Nutrition Library meal plans has got you covered there too.
This is evidence-based information. Registered dietitians are in this app weekly answering members' questions. There's an exclusive podcast within the app that's run by Ryan, who is the prenatal dietitian that founded this entire thing. It's a wealth of knowledge and resources and will take you far beyond that one-page handout your doctor handed you that actually probably has out-of-date information about eating in pregnancy.
So head on over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library as soon as you get your big fat positive. Well, okay, first message me and Caitlin so we can do a happy dance with you. Then head over to the Prenatal Nutrition Library to get clear strategies to meet your nutrient needs, as well as to take the stress out of confirming what's safe and most optimal for you and your baby while you're pregnant. Use code FFF20 for 20% off. All right, we are back. So Caitlin, can you rephrase your question? Just refresh us on what you just asked.
Yeah, totally. So, preconception, pregnancy, breastfeeding, recovering from growing a whole human inside of you and delivering it requires a lot of nutrients. We've spoken about that today. We speak about that a lot. How can somebody who is concerned about doing this in like the most optimal way rely on something like prenatal or other individual supports based on their needs to like feel more confident that they're like hitting the mark and not missing the mark in terms of their nutrition needs?
Yeah, I think supplements can absolutely play that role in helping you feel like, okay, I got everything that I needed in a given day. And certainly starting with a multivitamin and mineral blend. We know that the majority of the sort of the US population is not getting enough vitamin D, vitamin B12, vitamin C, choline from diet. Those are all nutrients that are not
zinc,
magnesium
iodine.
too, for different reasons. Yeah, there's a whole host of them, but vitamin D is not really readily available in that many foods. And to really get your vitamin D from the sun, we really need to be spending time outside with the majority of your vitamin D receptors are really more on your chest, stomach, and back.
Yeah, it's like
Most
we're
of
all
us
supposed
are
to be
covered.
Yeah. We're
when
supposed to be
outside.
shirtless working outside all day. That's what our genetics wants us to be doing.
Lifestyle is a big difference. You mentioned magnesium. Magnesium is something that used to be readily available in our soils and then would get translated into our produce.
Our water supply as well, definitely.
That's true.
And now
Largely
we have
depleted
filtered municipal water supply.
from both. So we're not getting our magnesium levels. Vitamin B12, the usable form, is really only available in meat products, and it isn't as high in things like, chicken breast. That is the more common meat that we eat versus chicken thighs and liver and
Beef
other kind of
heart
parts of the organ that are much more nutrient dense that we don't eat, snout to tail the same way that we used to. And then there's certainly other ones like vitamin C, for example, that basically freshness of food really matters. Vitamin C, degrades really quickly in food. And now that we're not, going to our backyard and picking broccoli from our backyard garden, it's buying at the grocery store that's been in transit for a week or two. By the time you
cooking
actually
it, which
cook it, further degrades it. So I think there's a bunch of instances just based off of daily life, even when you're doing your best, that it's difficult to get the diversity and amounts of nutrients that you really want. And that is where a robust sort of vitamin and mineral blend can come in. And then certainly, I think when you step back a bit, one of our strong viewpoints at Needed is that vitamins and minerals alone do not support enough nutrition for this perinatal life stage. That there can be benefits from other nutrients, whether it's, robust antioxidants that we often don't get enough of from food, or microbiome support for the relative probiotics, to omega-3 fatty acids, because we're really not eating enough fish, which is the best source of omega-3 fatty acids. And then certainly most kind of women at this life stage can benefit from more protein, actually, ironically, than we're getting right now. And we have a collagen protein for that reason, that has some pregnancy conditionally essential amino acids that aren't readily available in a lot of normal proteins that we eat, and can support higher levels of protein in a easily mixable way. And the list goes on from there.
Mm-hmm. And the list is long, but the list is also very specific, right? Like, one thing to consider with the RDAs is, you'll just see vitamin C on the nutrition panel of, your whatever cereal you pulled off the shelf. You don't see those on the tomato you picked up in the produce section of the department. But when we're talking about curating like specifically designed supplements, the form of the mineral, the form of the vitamin, the formulation, so even what you put together and how the body absorbs things is done, you hope to a standard of what Needed is choosing to do, where it's carefully researched, like taking a lot of research into it and carefully formulated to be readily absorbable and usable in the body. So can you speak to maybe a couple things specifically like in the prenatal, where you guys have made a thoughtful consideration on not just how much are we giving you, but what are we specifically giving you, or even maybe what we're not giving you because it's going to impact how you absorb other things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's a lot of examples to that regard, because we pay a lot of attention both to amount, as you mentioned, but the nutrient form, and also how the nutrient form is, manufactured and getting sourced, to make sure that, the supply chain is integrous and to our standards. I think there's a couple of great examples. B12, something we talked about before that most Americans are deficient in. B12 comes in a number of different forms, and the most common form of B12 is cyanocobalamin, which is what you'll see in the vast majority of, multivitamins on the market. And sadly, like in so many packaged foods as well. Like I keep like sort of, even for my daughter, when you're getting like organic puffs, I'm like, oh my gosh, you have to read the label so closely in terms of how many of these things are fortified with cyanocobalamin. But basically, cyanocobalamin does break down into the body into cyanide. There's some indications that that's potentially not good for us, but regardless, it is not a naturally occurring form of B12 in the human body. So we really did elect for basically having a 50% split between methylcobalamin and adenosylcobalamin, which are two forms of B12 that are actively found in the human body and tissues of other kind of mammals. And those two forms of B12 are do slightly different things because because of the molecular pairing, they're metabolized slightly differently in the body, but are more easily metabolized and readily put to use than a cyanocobalamin would be. So that's one example. There's certainly a number of others. I think, you know, I would say something like a vegan version of D3 has become very popular in supplements of late. It's something that we're looking at closely because we do have, you know, a population of consumers that do prefer to follow a vegan diet, but we haven't yet gotten comfortable with that ingredient for two reasons. Of one, sort of supply chain sustainability. It's sourced from lichen, which is endangered. And two, we have not seen sort of the clinical results to show that it really does perform in the body like the more common form of vitamin D3 in supporting your, you know, vitamin D levels, which is very critical for this life stage. So those are...
It's almost like eating completely vegan is not that natural.
As she sips her water.
Yeah. You know, that's a conversation probably for another time.
Like that Kermit the Frog meme, you know, where he's like, but that's really none of my business, and like sips his tea. That's what that's supposed to be.
We're not gonna pin Ryan's tail to a comment like that today.
That's so true.
Sophia and I may have some strong opinions over here.
Ryan's work. That was Sophia's work.
Ryan's like, and will you edit out that section?
No, it's fine. I mean, I think people need to be very cautious around being vegan at this life stage and put a lot of extra attention into making sure they're supplementing and eating the right amounts of food, because it's, you know, animal proteins, animal meat is just very powerful in getting a lot of important nutrients like B12, like choline, like vitamin A.
You are an animal. You are. So that means if you are not getting the nutrition you need, your body will eat you. Your body will break down your brain to get that the choline, to get those omega-3s. Your own brain will catabolize itself to grow your baby's brain. Yeah. Your liver, your lungs, your bones, and your own tissues. So that's why we see vegan moms who have C-sections. They have really hard time healing. That's why we see vegan moms have terrible perineal tearing when they give birth. It's because you are an animal and so is your baby, and your baby will break down your body in order to grow and live. We see this so much. And so I'm on my soapbox here. Ryan doesn't need to agree with any of this, but being vegan can be so wonderful for so many reasons. And those reasons will still be there when your family's complete.
Can we talk about animals for a second?
And go ahead.
Departure from the stock. But I was watching a show called Growing Up Animal with my 6-year-old yesterday, as we had just laid on the couch praying for health. And I learned something I never knew, and maybe it's because I don't know much about animals other than humans, but did you know that animals that hibernate and have babies, so animals like a grizzly bear, which is what we were watching, they will mate and then there will be a blastocyte, so the product of sperm and egg, and the blastocyte will just chill and hang out and will not implant unless the mom has enough fat stores to like sustain hibernation, have the baby, and breastfeed it for 2 months while in hibernation and still sleeping, by the way. Didn't know that they slept while they had their baby. Wish I could sign up for that.
Dude, if only.
But isn't that the most amazing thing? Like,
that's bodies are really,
kangaroos do something similar too. Their babies will like not grow further
until they have enough nutrient stores.
Or, you know, stress or, you know, whatever happens to
fire
kangaroo.
Season
I don't know what
Australia.
Kind of stress they have.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay. Segue away from veganism, unless there's anything else anyone wants to say here.
It can be a wonderful thing, but that
And then
the
I think
reason
if
that
you're
it's wonderful,
doing it for the environmental impact, there's a lot of ways where, sourcing the right meats can actually have less of a carbon footprint than eating
and
a
there's
full
so
vegan
many
diet.
ways to reduce your carbon footprint beyond, that don't have nutritional implications. There's so many things that we all can do, that we all should be doing anyway.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm going to tee you up for another one. And then I think after we answer this question, we'll take another break. But it's specifically in pregnancy. I mean, I hear stories still, and like this shocked me 10 years ago in this space, but it still shocks me that it's out there. This idea that like, oh, just pick any prenatal off the shelf. Oh, just pick any multivitamin. Oh, that Flintstones multivitamin you took as a baby is going to be enough. Like, why is it in this specific stage of pregnancy? Let's switch to the idea of pregnancy, that the RDAs aren't really enough. And we need to start thinking towards like, hey, we're building all this tissue. We just talked about how your body will turn to your own tissue if you don't have enough tissue. Can you give us any specifics or any thoughts on why this period specifically, we need to look way beyond the RDAs?
Yeah, I mean, well, I think just stepping back a bit, I think that take any prenatal, it doesn't matter, just as long as it has folic acid.
Oh my gosh.
Is sadly, I think that, the majority of discourse. I interviewed not too long ago a very preeminent tech-focused women's health clinic that's, supposed to be the new modern care for women. And all 20 of the OBs I interviewed there, pretending to be a patient, said exactly that, other than one added, take DHA as well, as that's important, and buy it at Whole Foods because I think they have cleaner products than other places. And it is sad that that's the sort of the extent of recommendations. And I think that's a lot of the 4 that we came into with needed of just like, I think being shocked for myself and my business partner, Julie, that we as trained nutritionists, when we were starting to think about our fertility journeys, discovered through a bunch of extensive nutritional testing, as I mentioned before, that we had severe deficiencies despite eating a very proactive, thoughtfully sourced diet. And in looking at, the existing sort of prenatals on the shelf, they weren't going to get us anywhere close in closing those gaps. And, I think started needed because we viewed that a radically better perinatal standard needs to exist. And certainly that's in how you design the products, but it's really about how do you change the whole system and get individual consumers more aware of this issue such that they can be sort of champions of change for women at large. So I think just stepping back a bit, that we know definitively that this life stage is the most nutritionally intense in a woman's life. And if we know that the RDAs aren't cutting it when you're not pregnant, how is that going to support you while you are pregnant without really your body taking an incredible toll? And, as we've talked about, our bodies will prioritize baby. So a nutritionally depleted mom can have a healthy baby. I think, is that baby as healthy as it could be when you really look at, long-term susceptibility to disease, cognition, development, immune system function? There could be a lot of question marks thrown out, but at least unborn in terms of like, normal physical body and all organs in place. Yeah, you can have a very healthy baby, but it leaves mom in an incredibly depleted position that then she has to go on to breastfeeding. Makes me think of like
Charlotte's Web, where like Charlotte dies and her babies grow from her body. That's just not necessary.
Yeah. Women are incredibly giving, but I think we believe that you can be even more giving when you support yourself.
When you're well.
Yeah. One nutrient that I think about in the 8 capsule prenatal is vitamin D. Most prenatals on the market have maybe 800 IUs of vitamin D. Some are jumping to
probably
2,000.
Even less, because I think the vitamin D RDA is 600 IUs. And then we know from the research that like 4,000 IU is the minimal you would want in pregnancy, and 6,000 is the minimal that you would want while breastfeeding. And many women need more than that, depending on their, where they live, their time outdoors, their diet, how good of a vitamin D
baseline they have going into
Yeah.
pregnancy, even, a lot of those things. But that's one area that, you are unique in the marketplace in setting that high of a standard. Are there other nutrients in the prenatal specifically that you're like, everyone else doesn't seem to see this as big of a deal? Like, I feel like choline is one that's maybe up there.
We were the first company to launch a choline, as far as we understand it, actually hitting the choline RDA. So choline, or RDA, I guess it's technically not an RDA, but this government suggested amount for pregnancy is 400 milligrams. And we were the first prenatal to put that amount in. And we would like to put more in, truthfully, but we are orders of magnitude above most prenatals on the market. Either don't have choline or have 50 milligrams or less.
Yeah, an embarrassingly low amount, just so they can say, contains choline. And you can be like, oh, I'm trendy. I'm taking the choline
And that,
supplement.
I think, is a combination of just like choline isn't yet very well understood. Really the research around choline in the RDA setting was set in the 80s versus the 40s, when all of the other nutrients kind of were established in terms of you need a minimal amount in diet. So with that, I think like the choline baseline is more robust than some of the other nutrients, but there's a lot of research that's come out of late that choline is really optimal, closer to 1,000 milligrams. But choline is a super bulky,
it's a big molecule
nutrient. So it's stinky and it's big. So it's not the funnest nutrient to formulate with.
That's why you're not seeing it in your gummies, ladies.
Yeah, exactly.
That's why it's not in those fruit snacks that you call supplements.
Exactly. And so we feel comfortable that like our 400 milligrams in our prenatal, if you're someone that like, eats a couple of like eggs every day, you're going to be great on choline. But for those that don't, we do sell a separate choline standalone. Or if you're happy with your prenatal, we have a lot of customers that then just buy our choline because, 95% at least of the market is missing at least a reasonable amount of choline.
Or I tell my clients that already bought a huge supply of the other guy's stuff that doesn't have enough choline, like, don't put it in the trash. There's still some good stuff there. We'll just get you some extra choline to help you along the way. And that's where needed choline is really helpful as well.
All right, so let's take our second break and hear from Needed
our sponsor.
Our sponsor.
Do you know what? I'm going to go put on my Needed t-shirt during this break too.
She's coming back with her. She's going to have a...
And you people watching on YouTube can see a shirt.
What do you call that?
Really exciting.
A uniform change. Uniform's not the right word.
Wardrobe change.
Okay. We'll be back in a second. Hey guys, we're taking a break from our episode and I want to talk about something that's super confusing. When you head down the supplement aisle and you're looking for a prenatal, and on the prenatal bottle itself, it says, do not take if you're trying to conceive, pregnant, or breastfeeding. Like, what the heck?
Yeah, it says talk to your doctor if you are pregnant, could be pregnant, breastfeeding, postpartum, whatever. And every supplement has this. You go down the supplement aisle, you go shopping on whatever supplement website, and there's a disclaimer on every bottle of every single thing, which means that everything that you've been taking your whole life long is now a big question mark about whether or not you are potentially harming yourself by taking something where you're trying to be healthy. So that is why we partnered with Needed. Needed is a perinatal nutrition supplement brand that has a wide array of products specifically designed for women who are pregnant, trying to become pregnant, breastfeeding, or postpartum. So it's not just that these products like can work if you're in that situation, or oh, it's probably okay if you take it while you're trying to conceive. No. These products are researched, they are formulated, and they are put together specifically for women who are trying to conceive, pregnant, breastfeeding, and postpartum.
This answers so many questions. I always get asked, like, what can I take? It's cold and flu season. What's safe? Needed has an immune support. That's safe whether you're trying to conceive, pregnant. It's even safe for your little ones.
And it's not just immune support. They've got collagen, they've got hydration support, they have digestive support, they have prenatal multi. They even made a line for dudes.
Needed is somebody we're really proud to be partnering with. So head over to their website and use code FFF20 for 20% off your order. All right, back from the break. We've been talking, and Sophia's done a wardrobe change.
Needed shirt.
So talk to us a little bit, Ryan, about is it 3 different forms of prenatal vitamins that Needed has for women? So we've got kind of the original formulation, a powder, and then one that's, give us the breakdown.
Yeah, sure. So we have 3 prenatal multivitamins, our prenatal multis. And as you mentioned, we have a 8 capsule prenatal multi and a prenatal multi vanilla powder that can mix into almond milk, smoothies, oatmeal, and those are nutritionally the same and really intended to be the most supportive prenatal on the market. But we also understand that, certain life stages or in transitioning from a 1 a day, jumping immediately to an 8 capsule, or maybe you aren't a smoothie maker. So making a smoothie, every day isn't going to allow you to be as compliant as you would want. We did end up making a 3 capsule essentials version. And this can be very popular for, women when they're sort of nauseous or you just struggle with capsules, and kind of you can ultimately take, 1 pill per meal, which can be a benefit to many. And certainly dosages are less supportive than the 8 capsule or the powder, but it still is a pretty sort of, for a 3 capsule multi, quite a potent option. So those are our 3 multivitamins. And then there's certainly, we design all of our products together in a system such that they work. And depending on your life stage, we certainly do recommend you pair our multivitamin with other products. For example, we don't have iron in our multivitamin, right? Mm-hmm. Iron is a mineral, but iron, I think we separated it for a few different reasons. One, iron demand changes pretty significantly by stage of pregnancy and by individual. And too much iron can be not beneficial. So we really want women to be able to kind of titrate that iron amount up and down. In addition, iron interferes with the absorption of like other minerals like calcium. So we do want your iron to be taken on a separate time of day than your main sort of multivitamin. So had some intentionality in pulling that out. And then we have an assortment of other products of, you want to take your multivitamin with an omega-3 fatty acid for your DHA, EPA, and then have a whole host of other benefits like egg quality support if you're in that trying to conceive phase, or a sleep support that's pregnancy safe if you're, struggling to sleep throughout the pregnancy. It can be a nice addition, and a whole host more. And they are all kind of intended to work complementary such that you're not getting sort of too high if you did take the whole system of products. And that's something that we otherwise kind of come across as a problem pretty mm-hmm. significantly in the market. And the egg quality support is a great example. We weren't aware of an egg quality support that existed before ours that either one was more than an egg quality support. So it was like some sort of ovulation support hormone balancer. And, not everyone needs extra of certain nutrients. If you're high in androgens, you don't really want to take more inositol as an example, or, you might need more estrogen support or testosterone support. Anyways, we wanted something that was just a bunch of potent antioxidants to support egg quality and nothing else, such that it wasn't a negative for any women. And then other egg quality supports on the market tend to have folate in them. So if you were to take that egg quality support with a prenatal vitamin, which you absolutely want to be on in the trying to conceive stage, your folate levels start getting too high. We see a lot of side effects from the way kind of folate interacts with serotonin neurotransmitters that women susceptible to sort of depression or anxiety that could get elevated with extra folate.
That's cool. That's wonderful for our listeners to hear that you can kind of
succinctly too.
That was awesome. So shifting a little bit to the idea of like, most of our listeners are in the United States, and what we see as maybe the more typical American style of eating. I don't want to say even like the standard American diet, because I think, the people that are listening to us are trying to go beyond that. But where do nutrients of concern, when we're specifically talking about RDAs, overlap with concerns for the way that the modern woman may be eating, especially I think with a focus on weight loss? There's always a restrict piece. And I can think of one macronutrient you were talking about earlier that might be a big piece here, but
protein and fat.
Kind of at large?
I think both are ones that we see. Probably, I think just in general, we hear from a lot of our practitioners that serve. We work very closely with, 4,000 plus practitioners right now, and draw a lot of clinical insights into everything that we do from practice around understanding our consumer better and what their needs are. Because of there being deficits in the research, we need really strong analogs to get other information that, our products are working well, or when driving, product formulation, that we are getting dosages and safety and all of that correct. But we do hear again and again that in a, nutritionally interested population, there is generally like an overall nutrient deficit of like calorie restriction, of fat restriction, and that has is just a great carrier for a whole host of very important nutrients for this life stage. So I think a lot of vitamin A deficiency, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding about vitamin A.
Yeah, a lot of people are scared of it. They don't even want to have anything to do with it.
OB will say, cut it out of your skincare products, and then people fear it in their multivitamin. But the form of vitamin A, beta carotene, that is found in like carrots and sweet potatoes is really not metabolized efficiently enough to be your full source of vitamin A for this life stage. And we really advocate that the like animal form vitamin A, retinol, we use retinol palmitate in our formula, is critical. And I think
that's different than the retinol you find in face cream.
Slightly different, but they're within the same family. But I think there are ultimately like tetragenic effects of retinol, but the high mark of that is orders of magnitude beyond sort of what people are currently avoiding. And we do think that the avoidance, this is not a suggestion of, go use the retinol face cream. I don't know that market well enough, but a huge advocate of make sure there is a retinol form of vitamin A in your prenatal multivitamin.
And listeners, just so you know, she used that word teratogenic, which is means can cause birth defects, is what that word means.
Which we're all trying to help you avoid.
Which we're all
and
trying
basically,
to,
we sort of, there can be that problem if there's too little or too much. So a lot of what we, try to do is how do we make sure there's the right amount, and sort of we feel comfortable that the vitamin A in our prenatal multivitamin is both very supportive for someone that doesn't get, vitamin A in diet, but also we do have I eat a decent amount of liver. We have a lot of customers that do too. It
Or
also
they're
is an
taking a
amount
liver
that if
supplement.
you are getting it through other forms,
Hey, that leads me to another question. So it's so trendy right now, like desiccated liver as a prenatal. What are your,
Jeez.
why would people maybe not want to be doing that? Why would they want to be doing that? Can you speak to desiccated liver or liver, just eating liver? Like, why is that good or maybe not enough or just, know what I'm asking?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is a very hot topic of late and something that I have strong opinions about, and someone that I recommend that a lot of my strong opinions have come from my personal physician, Dr. Ari Calhoun, who's like a expert in childhood brain development and really even like adult kind of how nutrition impacts brain processing, personality, brain function, etc. And so she has a lot of concerns with too much liver being a really high source of copper. Throwing off your zinc copper ratio, which is really important, and can lead to a lot of issues if that ratio is out of balance. So sees a lot of issues if women are taking too much liver, i.e. liver capsules on a daily basis and throwing off that ratio. So I think puts out a lot of caution to that regard. There still are, I think, liver is a superfood. I still eat it. I don't take supplements of it, but I certainly will make chicken liver pate and stuff at home and find it to be delicious. But eat it with moderation, like other things. And then in terms of otherwise, if you are able to keep your copper zinc ratio in balance, and liver does have, potent sources of some other nutrients like B12 and vitamin A, it is not well-rounded across the full spectrum of nutrients that you need. And because of that, we don't view it's a substitute for a prenatal vitamin.
And when you think about eating nose to tail, which a lot of us that recommend considering organ meats, which is not, at least in the modern world, something that many of us are doing because we're not slaughtering our own animals and we're buying, cellophane wrap packages of this type of part of this muscle from this animal. You slaughtered the whole animal and then you ate off of that for a while and there was only one liver in it. So while liver is a fairly large organ in something like a cow, it's not a huge organ in a chicken. You might slaughter chickens more,
that
often.
Chicken breast, could last you a whole week, or the whole chicken could last you a whole week for multiple meals for a family.
When you zoom out, and a lot of times people want to say like, oh, liver, I mean, it's nature's multivitamin. And while that may be the case for some vitamins, it isn't something in traditional cultures that they're eating every single day. And so a lot of times when people want to take the natural argument, they actually divorce themselves from looking at the cultures that are eating these things and benefiting from them because they're not realizing, the dose of the sourcing is important, just like the dose of the sourcing is important in a multivitamin that's been carefully formulated. So I think that that's something to always consider when you're trying to look for that more natural approach is, okay, great. We want you to eat organ meats. We are supportive of that, but a desiccated product and a glandular product too, which is another thing in preconception and pregnancy, people need to be really careful of. Because people are going the more natural approach. They're working with people like Sophia and I, they're working with naturopaths, and all of a sudden they're on something that might have a glandular in it. So something that might have like thyroid gland or adrenal gland. And those things, just like the liver, we don't know exactly how much of this or that the animal ate. And so there's a lot of variability in those products. And this isn't the time that we're looking for variability and big question marks when it comes to nutrition or hormones, which is very often what you're getting in glandulars.
Yeah, I agree completely.
All right, well, let's take our last break, and then we will wrap up this interview with Ryan with a couple more questions, and we'll do our Yeah Girl.
Hey, it's me again, Sophia Pavia, registered dietitian nutritionist specializing in women's health, fertility, and optimal progesterone production. And I'm interrupting an episode of my own podcast to tell you about my online course called Ovulation Unlocked. So if you've been listening to our podcast episodes, you've probably heard a lot of things about basal body temperature, cervical mucus, cervical position, and tracking your fertility. Well, I have designed a 90-minute self-paced online course, which I titled Ovulation Unlocked, that puts all of that together and teaches you how to be the expert on your own fertility from home. This course is designed to put you in the driver's seat of your own fertility, not only so you can know what's going on with your body on any given day, but so that if you need medical help, you can show up to the appointment informed and ready to communicate. Too frequently, us women show up to our doctor's appointments and just say something like, "I want to have a baby." And the doctor looks at you and says, "Good for you. Stop using birth control, start taking a prenatal, come back in a year if you're not pregnant." And that's all we get. However, Ovulation Unlocked puts you in the driver's seat, puts you in control of your fertility to where if you need help, you can show up to that appointment informed and ready to communicate your needs. So if you want to become the expert on your own body and your own fertility, head on over to my Instagram bio and tap the Ovulation Unlocked link today.
And we're back. So tell us a little bit, Ryan, about how Kneaded is different in terms of how it formulates products. And we'd love to hear a little bit about how kind of the medical community at large has received Kneaded entering the game. And I'm sure that has some positive and negatives.
We've all been attacked by the same people online.
Yeah. So, I think really when we think about formulating our products, this goes back to we felt radically better products needed to exist. And radical change
on my
is
shirt,
needed.
it says
Exactly. It's a big something we
listening.
focus on. Try to not overuse the word, but also it is important when used appropriately. Most supplements are weight labeled. Like the number of companies that actually formulate a supplement from ground up versus sort of taking what a contract manufacturer already has in their assortment is pretty minimal. And we do emphasize we need to rebuild from the ground up to make it that much better. So I think our look and formulation like really starts with an intense review of consumer needs. A lot of those consumer needs are supported by heavy practitioner input around, hey, what's the data you're seeing in your practices? Let's aggregate this together with other practitioners to really understand where are their deficiencies, where are their problems, where are their unmet needs with consumers. Pair that with sort of available research and just biochemical understanding of how things are metabolized and where something can support, which really drives to, hey, like we think, a stress support for the postpartum life stage is really important and something that's breastfeeding safe, that's really intended for how does a woman kind of get back to feeling like herself sooner than later, but doesn't affect or supports sort of milk supply. And that's a problem that we hear. And then we go through ingredient by ingredient, then dose by dose, supplier by supplier, what would be the best formula to come together. So our R&D process is certainly lengthy, but it starts with a critical review around how do we support the consumer? Where is there an unmet need, and allowing them to have ultimate, thriving kind of capacity.
And is that how you came up with the name Kneaded?
It was how we came up with the name Kneaded. I think it was funny. We were talking to some folks and they're just, you guys just keep talking about what these women need and what you need. And why don't you just call yourself Needed? Better science is needed. You were needed. And it sort of felt uncomfortable at first, but then it stuck. And to your second question around how have we been accepted in the medical community at large? So I think we were lucky that we spent about 3.5 years in R&D before coming to market with a very kind of wide population of practitioners that really helped sort of shepherd our early formulations and make sure that we had the expertise we needed and the consumer understanding we needed to get those formulas right. So I would say we have been celebrated and very warmly welcomed from nutritionally informed practitioners. So like, practitioners like you all, like naturopathic doctors, like, OBGYNs who have taken additional time to better understand nutrition or work in complement with a midwife. I think there's still a long way to go in helping those that aren't yet nutritionally educated on understanding what we do and why we're different. And as you mentioned, there certainly have been some folks that have been more combative and pushing across
people that
some of the things that we recommend. You can find on our website. We have a blog that we talked pretty explicitly around why we disagree with ACOG and the CDC on folic acid being the only form of folate that they recommend. And we just flatly disagree. And I think we view as a company, we're not going to shy away from conflict. We want to, share learnings with compassion such that, women scare tactics are never helpful. But we do think what is kind is to be, clear and informative. And we really try to do that. And where we do have a strong stance, even if it's, directly against the government, unpopular kind of view, we will talk about it. And I think there will be headway and challenges with that, but I think we are looking to do more than just sell supplements. We really do want to change the status quo, the standard of care, and that will, include having some more difficult conversations. And I think, you guys probably saw, we launched Needed Labs, which is our research arm, and a couple of things came out with that launch, but the overall sort of premise of it is, frankly, just like we believe unequivocally that nutrition changes outcomes. And the fact that that is not currently widely understood or accepted means that women and children are paying a really steep price. And we really the mission of it is twofold. I think one, to make sure that nutrition can no longer be ignored in the standard of care, that enough data will be collected and put in the face and had to be listened to by the powers that be. And that's where we can't be alone in this journey, that a lot of it, we believe that every consumer can be an activist. And it's funny, I was, touring preschools for my daughter, and one of the preschools we're looking very seriously at, one of their main pillars is that we teach kids to be activists. And it's just wait, what does that mean for a 2-year-old to be an activist? But it's simply, they say it's simply them having the confidence to stand up and say what they need, or to say if they see someone doing something that isn't right, to be able to say, hey, that's not right. And so we do believe that there's a lot in the power of the collective, and that individual women kind of, pushing a care provider that wouldn't otherwise pull a vitamin D level for them, saying, no, you need to pull my vitamin D levels, and here are the reasons why, and being an advocate. And then maybe it'll be easier for the next person to get that information. So anyways, how do we get the data out there? And then certainly, there's still a lot to learn when it comes to perinatal and women's health. And we want to stay at the cutting edge of those learnings. And that's really the grounding of sort of Needed Labs, and have kind of kicked off 3 initiatives. Of one, we wrote a hefty 50-page white paper that basically outlines everything that we know in the research and clinical practice from our practitioners right now around, why we dose the way that we do, why we think nutrition at this life stage is so important. 2, we kicked off our first clinical studies. We're actively recruiting 250 women across 6 cities in the US to test their nutrient levels in pregnancy. And then we are kicking off in January a beta of basically a nutritional clinic. We've partnered with a nutritionist we've gotten to know very closely, Emily Ridbaum of Grow Baby up in Oregon, over the last number of years, who she and her mother, who's an OBGYN, have run a family practice and implementing a pregnancy nutritional care model where they do, testing interventions and supplement and nutritional recommendations, and have put together pretty mind-blowing data over 12 years in terms of how their nutritional interventions are changing outcomes. An example would be the preterm birth rates in the US right now are 1 in 10, and they have a less than 1%. And this is in a 50% Medicaid population with higher rates of smoking, alcohol, and drug use than the US population at large. So anyways, all of that is grounding to better help women get access to this information and pull together more data around, hey, this nutritional support can change outcomes.
That's amazing. And it's so exciting.
Yeah.
That's a yeah,
Having
girl.
a partner with you in this makes me feel good about myself. I'll tell you that right now.
Oh, Lord.
It's glad to hear. Yeah, it is. It's rewarding. It feels like you're making a
About
difference.
me, after all, isn't it?
Stop it.
Hey, whatever gets you out of bed in the morning,
Well, this has been a wonderful episode, and I know that you have got to buzz on to the next thing because your time and expertise is in high demand. But we want to leave our listeners with your yeah, girl. So can you tell us something that we can say yeah, girl to?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I feel like there feels like a lot of things right now, but I think a win that we're blessing for is that, I think my daughter has been a very easy sleeper the last week, and we've had other sleep regressions, and I think I have to just say, yeah, girl, too.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Triple that, yeah, girl. Oh, that is a yeah, girl we can get behind on the Food Freedom Fertility podcast. Oh, that is good for you. I celebrate that fully. Caitlin, what's your yeah, girl?
Well, the fact that we talked about organ meat today and I didn't just run to the bathroom after having a tummy bug. I'm just going to say, yeah, girl, I've held down food and
hasn't barfed in 24 hours, right?
My body's moving in the right direction. So,
oh my gosh. Girl. Yeah, girl, to that. Holy mackerel. Oh, so I guess that comes to me, which is yeah, girl. Do you want to know my yeah, girl? Okay. I got my husband a totally bomb diggity anniversary present. And I am so proud of myself for doing it. So he has this, in his job, he sometimes wears night vision goggles, like him and the guys he works with, they use night vision a lot.
Okay.
And they work way out in the desert. And you can see the stars very beautifully from there. And so they took this really cool picture where they all have their night vision goggles on, and it was completely pitch black, but they turn up the exposure on the camera so you can just see kind of like their silhouettes, and then the glow of the night vision around their eyes, and then all the stars behind them. It's a super cool picture, but it probably got taken 3 years ago. It's been sitting in an envelope in my office for 3 years. I'm like, this picture is too cool to just have it just sitting here. So he has all these various pictures from deployments he's done and stuff, and it's all in the same frame. And so I found the framer and I took this cool picture to it and I had them frame it, and then I presented it to him for our anniversary, and now it's hanging on our wall.
Is he so happy? Did he love it?
He was so happy. He was so happy to have it, and he does love it. And it is a cool picture, except I realized there's one guy in the picture pulling out his wiener.
Oh my gosh.
You can't see the wiener, but he's
no,
blurry because he's
No, dude.
His hand is in his pants. He's trying to, and I was like, what is this guy doing? And Louis like, oh yeah, we did one wiener out picture. And I was like, you guys are gross. Of course you would. What happens? These guys go to the desert and get feral together and just wiener out.
Yeah.
There's this, and he's right in the front, and I didn't notice it till I paid for this whole framing process to happen. And there's the Wiener King is right.
That's why
in the
maybe
front.
It's in your husband's office, not in the family room.
I'm looking at it right here. I'll show you guys when we stop recording. You guys can see it. I won't flash this guy's wiener to the population, but.
All right. Well,
I get a gold star because I came up with a bomb diggity anniversary present that blew his mind.
I love that.
Very
yeah, girl.
fun.
And no dude. No
to the
wieners.
wiener.
Yeah. All right. Well, this has been another fun episode of Food Freedom and Fertility. Please subscribe if you don't already do so. Leaving a rating and a review help other people get this awesome information. We need to hear from women like Ryan who are changing the landscape of perinatal nutrition, health, and generations, really. So, Ryan, thank you for your time today, and we will see you all next week.
Hey, it's Sophia. If you love the show and want to continue your health and fertility journey using our resources, head on over to FoodFreedomFertility.com for show notes, links to products and services, information about our guests, and our newsletter. Again, that's FoodFreedomFertility.com. Thanks for listening.